Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off and then sign back on. I'll be back.
You said stream is beginning?
It's going to take about 30 seconds to connect.
Is it on the Facebook yet?
Yeah, it's on TOV.
Let me go grab it.
I already gave her.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Let me grab it.
Okay, we got about a minute left, and then we're going to go hot.
Okay.
Take the scene with us. True story.
I don't see the video. Hold on.
I see it. You putting code in?
All right. All right, honey. Where's the video?
You can see it on your page?
I don't see it. No. Am I on the right page?
Oh, I see it.
No. It's the other one.
I'm sorry. Okay.
You see it?
Hold on. I don't see the video. This one?
Yep, that's it.
Where's the video? I don't see it. Am I on the right
Alright, so this is good. Alright. I'm about to go into the intro.
Okay, so this is us behind the brand?
Yeah.
Okay, let me share it.
Okay, I just shared it on my page. I'm going to go live from IG.
I think we got feedback.
What's going on? What's going on? This is Dontaye Carter with Beyond the Brand on Hits 92.3. And guess what? I'm excited about who we got in the house today. And I'm extremely excited because it's not just a woman out here doing great and amazing things, but she's a really good friend. She is the co-founder of the Mute Rkelly movement. She's a lobbyist. She's a mermaid. She is everything to everybody. She is Kenyette Barnes, and I'm just so grateful to have her join us today on Beyond the Brand. Kenyette, how you doing?
I'm good, honey. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just so happy we're able to make this work. You know, I'm just really passionate about getting some good stories out, and
right.
I just I've been sitting here and looking at my network and the people that I'm connected with, the people who are doing things that are leaving a legacy, you know, for their children, for my children, for this world. And so it was just I'm just so grateful just to have you on and have you come here and just impart some of this wisdom, you know, behind what you're doing and how you've been able to make such a huge impact. I mean, we were talking about, just one of the many women leading this campaign to bankrupt Rkelly. So
I hope that's not my legacy, but it appears it's one of them.
It'll be bigger. It'll be bigger than that. But I just how very strategic you are. I mean, you're very intelligent, very thoughtful. You understood that it was going to take more than a little noise to get justice.
Absolutely.
And you played a huge part in that. So I'm just excited to have you here. But, I want to introduce our audience to you. I want you to be able to share your story, to talk to us about where these passions that you have came from.
Okay, well, I think just understanding that sexual violence is something that we don't talk about, especially in the Black community, and just really diving into what does that intersectional activism look like. And I think that's really where the heart of my work lies, is when you have over 60% of Black women who are survivors of sexual violence, myself included, unfortunately, you have to begin to shift that narrative away from the legacy of white supremacy and really start looking a little deeper, peeling back the layers of that onion and realizing that, yes, oppressed people can also be oppressive in certain situations, and that how do we deconstruct that without being overly punitive, but making sure that we're gauging accountability with love.
And when did this start for you?
Wow, with Rkelly? God, I think I was muting Rkelly before Y2K, man. I mean, I was done with Robert. I was done with Rob Kelly for years, and I was a huge Rkelly fan. I mean, I want to be super clear. This isn't just, hateration like from the from the door. I loved Rkelly. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. It was a huge Cleveland to Chicago pipeline, and anything out of Chicago came through Cleveland. Anything from Cleveland came through Chicago. And Rkelly would come to Cleveland often and perform, and then we would start hearing rumors that, don't be along with him because he likes to mess with young girls. And it was sort of dismissed as, he's a dirty old man, but he is the king of R&B, and he's amazing, and he's this, but just don't be alone with him.
How old were you during this time?
Oh, wow. I was late teens. Late teens, yeah.
And how did it feel? Because I think that's one of the things, right, that we don't talk about is how the impact of these things has made women feel, right?
Wow.
We don't get too deep into that. So how did it make you feel?
Marginalized, invalid, that in some way we had done a great job at crafting a narrative that girls and women were complicit in their own sexual assault, and that if you just simply didn't do certain things, you would not have to deal with this. And conversely, if it happened to you, well, then you had to have done something. So I think there were a lot of social narratives that really took away sexual agency from black girls and also protected predators. I remember telling someone recently that, when I was growing up, I knew about white supremacy. I knew about Jim Crow. I was fortunate that I lived in a household with parents who were very open about, the realities of being black and melanated in the United States. And we talked about that, but we didn't talk about sexual violence.
Yeah.
And even within civil rights spaces, we don't talk about it. And I remember being a young teen and walking home late after school or after a school activity. My fear was not that some random white man was going to come and harm me. It was that I was going to get raped by a group of boys and men who looked like me.
I have to be honest. I mean, it has, since I've been married now for about 5 years. And my wife has done a great job of being just patient and loving when it comes to these issues. Because, I mean, even with the Antonio Brown deal that just happened here recently.
Yeah.
It was...
Santonia?
Huh?
Santonia Brown?
Antonio
Brown.
Oh,
Antonio Brown. Okay, the football player. Okay.
And so, like, I'm opening this article and I'm reading through. And I'm like, well, the second incident that she mentioned was just very egregious. I mean, it was just despicable. I couldn't even believe that would happen. But then the fact that she went back. And so in my mind, I was like, well, is it that bad? Because she went back? Like, how is this? And so, before I came to any conclusions, I said, all right, babe, read this article and then educate me.
Right.
And she said, Dontaye, I think, your issue is that you look at sexual assault through the eyes of a man who would never do it.
Exactly.
And so she said, you're not looking at it through the eyes of a predator.
Exactly.
Through a man who prays, who identifies a woman who has a past trauma and different things.
Right.
And I mean, when she said that, it kind of hit me. And I'm just like, okay, I've got to reevaluate.
Absolutely.
Consistently reevaluate how I'm looking at these things.
Right.
Because, I mean, we're talking about a history of laws that have been written. Because, okay, so I'll say this. The more that I become educated, the more I'm starting to learn that even the laws that are written around sexual assaults aren't adequate. And I'm just like, that's a problem. And it becomes, it doesn't make me more fearful, but it angers me a little more, just knowing, okay, that I have a wife and I have a daughter now who essentially aren't protected effectively by the laws of this land. Because, I mean, they weren't written.
No, they never were. And I think, okay, clearly I'm not the cameraman here. All right, so to answer your question, first of all, your wife is a godsend. And there's so many sister friends out there that are doing this type of educating. And I do it in my personal life. And it's difficult. And I often say that, good men can sometimes be ignorant of this because they're not the targets of it. And so do I allow a pass? No. I don't allow a pass. What I do is I expect if you have a deficiency, you do what you need to do to learn it, to make that, to close that gap. It's like if you miss a day in school, you're going to get the makeup assignment, right?
Yeah.
Because you understand the consequences of not having that information. And I think when we talk about sexual violence, we have to also talk about the fact that we're quick to say not all men. But when we say not all men, what we're essentially saying is, I'm not doing it, and I have no culpability for stopping it, addressing it, or protecting women and girls from it. So that's where, for me, as an intersectional black feminist, I'm like, brothers, you don't get to do that anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a predator to stand up to predators.
Yeah.
And I understand the social conditioning of it's not my business, that's another man's woman, that's, I need to stay out of it. And what I caution men who say that is, then you're reducing her to property. When you say that's another man's woman, that's not my problem, what you're saying is that she no longer has autonomy. She no longer is a person. She belongs to him, and like a car or a pair of shoes, he can do with it as he wishes, and that is an extension of toxic masculinity and toxic patriarchy. And we need to have that conversation without shame. We need to have that conversation without accusations of you must hate men.
Yeah.
And we have to have those conversations. And I say this gingerly, we have to have those conversations before we become fathers and husbands.
It's very true. and I think a large portion of it is because, there are a lot of young black men like myself who grew up in households without their fathers present.
Exactly.
And so when you grow up without your father present, you kind of, you understand the provider aspect,
Right.
but you don't fully understand that protector aspect.
Exactly.
And so I think we do a whole lot of talk about white privilege. We need to do a lot of talking about black male privilege and black male accountability. And it's kind of through those eyes that I'm starting to get educated. And I mean, the more that I get educated, the more that I'm like, man, how in the world do we have these laws in place for 300-400 years? And I mean, I know I'm not the only man with a daughter. I'm not the only man who's married a woman. I'm not the only man who's done these things. But why is it such a...
Why? Okay, so the answer is because we live in a patriarchal society. And it was only until recently that you started to see women represented in positions of legislative power, number one.
Yeah.
We don't even have to go to Washington. We can go down the street and around the corner to the Gold Dome and look at the composition of our state legislators, male to female. And we can talk about race, but that's another conversation. So when you're talking about the power brokers, the people who are making the laws for women and girls are not women and girls. They're going to view it from a lens of male privilege. And very often male privilege, as we're seeing with Brett Kavanaugh, has some ugly remnants of sexism and toxic masculinity. And we need to be able to unpack that without accusations and attempts to marginalize the conversation. So I want to get back to that you're learning this for the first time, and I recognize that, and that you grew up in a household without a father, and I recognize that is an issue. That is also an issue for girls.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have, and I talk a lot about the concern with large age gaps in romantic relationships, and this is kind of at the core of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of young girls, are not seeking romantic affection.
Yeah.
They're seeking attention. They're seeking protection. They're seeking validation. They're not seeking romance. But unfortunately, that's kind of the barter that they have to kind of enter into to have some semblance of male validation, adult male validation.
Yeah.
And my suggestion to that is we need more cis hetero black male mentors.
Yeah. I agree, and it's like I said, it's been very eye-opening for me. It was funny. My wife and I were having this conversation. we're on our way to pick up our daughter from daycare, and she was just telling me how, you know, even looking at her parents, how they got married when they were 21, and the mere fact that, you know, when her mother left her father's house, it was expected that, okay, you go from your mother's house to your husband's house, without even looking at the fact that she could stand on her own 2 feet by herself, you know, being able to have that independence. And I mean, it's just, it's that conversation right there that is, like, unless you talk about it, you really can't question it, right? You just, all these things just happen, and they're just happening for years and years, and nobody's asking the question of, well, why does it happen? And so I'll be honest. I mean, it's been a huge learning process for me, but I'm grateful for it because, you know, if I don't listen, right? If I don't try to understand, if I don't educate myself,
Right.
then, and if I don't take accountability, because the reality is right, a man that looked just like me took full advantage of his privilege. Like, if I don't own that,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Then that cycle continues. Like, at
Right.
some point,
Yeah.
there has to be somebody that says, you know what?
Enough.
I get it. It's enough.
Yes.
And even if it starts with changing me in this circle around me.
Well, you know, I mean, that's how change happens. And, you know, it happens kind of in micro spaces, and then it just radiates out.
Yeah.
Once again, we talked about the Mute Rkelly campaign. The Mute Rkelly campaign started over coffee and mutual outrage. My sister friend and I met up at a Grant Park, Atlanta coffee shop and said, what the hell are we going to do about this? And
Wow.
2.5 years later, we have 12 chapters internationally, 15 canceled concerts, and an estimated $2 million of lost revenue, and it changed the social narrative of who he was, and that is the biggest kind of win of the Mute Rkelly campaign, and I would say that anyone can do that in micro spaces. But it's getting back to kind of how we're socialized. I mean, our popular music even tells us. I mean, girls are told to, you know, put a ring on it, you know, make them put a ring on it, and boys are told, you know, my mama told me you better shop around. So when we're kind of hearing these different narratives, and sometimes these narratives are reinforced by women, we have to talk about internalized misogyny among cis hetero women as well.
Very true.
It's basically a no-win situation. I mean, it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
The way we socialize boys and girls romantically in our society is essential to a Ponzi scheme or trying to win the basketball game at a carnival. It's set up for you to lose.
Yeah.
And if it's set up for you to lose, someone is winning. And who's benefiting from these conversations? Who's benefiting from respectability politics? Who's benefiting from, don't have sex with a lot of men because no man's going to want you. Who benefits from this? Toxic masculinity and patriarchy benefits from this. And, and we could talk about that kind of after the break about how we kind of do this Madonna whore thing when we talk about women, but men can show up in any way of sexual prowess and there's no accountability.
You know, one of the things that you said, I can't remember, I think it was the rally over at Piedmont Park, and you got up and you said, it's not just the sex traffickers that I'm concerned with, it's the men who also watch porn. And I'll be honest, it cut me, and it didn't cut me because I'm sitting at home and indulging in all this stuff. It cut me because that's that one act that people are like, yeah, I do it, but who am I hurting? You know what I'm saying?
So I want to talk about that. So, and I think if I recall, it was the child porn, like the lower age range pornography. So I am pro-sex worker. I support sex workers. I build with sex workers. I help sex workers organize for their labor rights. So I want to be clear about that. I also believe that if adults with a healthy sexual baseline want to indulge in pornography or strip clubs or escorting, that is their personal business. When we start lowering the age range of our preference when it comes to sexual material, when we want barely legal, when we want 16-year-olds, then it becomes a little bit more pathological. It's like, what is it about that you want? So that's kind of where I am, and it's like we We joke about things such as barely legal. We joke about things such as jailbait. I mean, we have songs about jailbait. We have songs about being barely legal. And, you know, we have the social narrative that if you meet her at 17, you just wait till her birthday and then you show up the next day. That's grooming.
Yeah.
And we don't call it what it is. We had an entire social joke made of the sexual violence of a 13-year-old black girl by Dave Chappelle. And it was until we started really unpacking that with the work of Rkelly and Tarana Burke's Me Too and other mostly black women activists that we started kind of looking at that with a bit of a like, that's not cool. I mean, look at what happened with David Chappelle's latest, you know, show. Never has he gotten this degree of pushback for his material. So for me, if you like him or not, the pushback is really because we've begun to change that narrative. And I think that's what needs to continue. So the one thing I do want to say, you mentioned, we talked about how boys are socialized. So I am honored that I gave birth to 2 beautiful black male humans. Okay, they're beautiful. I love my sons. They're amazing. But my sons at 27 and 11 have the same understanding when it comes to male privilege.
Yeah.
They understand that by virtue of being black in America, they are oppressed.
Yeah.
They also understand that by being black and cis hetero male, they have privilege. They have male privilege. And we talk about, you know, how do you navigate a situation with a woman.
Yeah.
With my older son who is getting married, and I'm excited for him. I'm going to be a mother-in-law, and I'm really excited. I know. I'm excited. I'm going to be a mommy-in-law. I can't wait. But with my youngest son, last year, when the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing came out, well, earlier this year, actually, last school year, we were talking about it at home, and I think the conversation had come up at school because a lot of his classmates' parents were also talking about it. And he came home and he said, any boy who uses his penis to hurt a girl is a turd and needs to go to juvie. Now, at a 10, 11-year-old processing, that's good for me.
Yeah.
Because it lets me know that, wait a minute, one, I have power in that situation. And I have the ability to make a decision.
Yeah.
And number 2, that behavior is punishable.
Yeah.
And so if at 10 and 11 years old, he can kind of connect those dots, I don't want to hear 40 and 50-year-old men saying, but wait, what about? But I don't want to hear it.
You know, and that's one of the things I can say that even like when it came to my mother that I was very grateful for, because her point was, if you've got to question the situation that you're in, you
Get out of
need
it.
to be there.
Get out of it.
And so
Just
you
get
sit back and you look at these shows that are popping up like 13 Reasons Why and all this stuff, and you're like, man, if we really address these things, and not only address it, but talk to our young men about being accountable to their actions, because I think our culture, right, it just has a misogynistic undertone to it, right?
Yes.
And we got to bring this stuff into the light and really start talking about it. And that's part of why I'm just, you know, so grateful to have you here and to be able to talk about it. Because I can't, as much as I'd love to say, hey, we've got to do better here, that comes, it hits harder home coming from you. Because I'm not a woman, and people can dismiss what I have to say, but it's still, I still bring value to the conversation because I'm talking to
you're an
friends about
ally,
this.
and you're needed. And I think the other thing, too, is we also have narrative, unfortunately, for people who speak up about it. So, you know, one of the things that is kind of floating around the internet now is that if you speak up against toxic masculinity, then you're a simp and you're white knighting and you're pandering for women, as opposed to saying, no, maybe what he's saying is right and you should listen to it. And of course, anytime a woman speaks up about it, then we're bitter and whatever. And I'm like, that's not true.
Yeah.
But however, I think that the reason why this continues, the 14th reason why, is because men benefit.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a predator to benefit from male privilege. You don't have to be a rapist to benefit from the societal protections that you get to cross the line with the girl that you met at a club.
Yeah.
We have people on the internet that kind of push narratives for young men who have difficulties dating that, hey, if she's drinking, it's her fault because why is she going out drunk, as opposed to saying, hey, if someone is drunk, you can't consent.
Yeah.
As simple as that. And I think we need to be able to recognize that you don't have to be a predator to benefit from the social protections of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, anytime you have to kind of cede your power in any way, we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
At any time, we don't want to do it. But the reality is, if your power is also concurrently oppressive
Yeah.
to someone else, then you got to do that gut check. Because in this day and age, if you don't do the gut check, it will be done on you.
Yeah.
And you won't like it.
Well, I think part of it too, right, is the reality is we've all got closets, right? That's just the reality.
We all got closets. We all got closets.
Some of us is like, shine the light. If you find something, we could talk about it. Others are like, they are so scared of those skeletons in their closet.
Right.
That they are like,
they'll deflect on you.
We'll deflect. We're going to put a lock on that closet. We are going to put some chains around
We'll
that
find
closet.
what's in your closet first before you come at me, yeah.
And so it's just sad. I mean, I just think even, when it comes to situations like Rkelly, I mean, the fact that this could carry on for so long.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's, I'm just like, even with my involvement, I mean, just the conversations that I'm having with women that I'm close to, I'm just like, man, like, I mean, there are older women who've been great mentors to me in business who are like, if I even open the door to tell you about the things that happened to me, I don't know if I'd be able to stand. The only reason I'm here is because I've locked that stuff up and threw it away.
Well, you're told, okay, so my generation, Generation X, okay, so we were kind of the first population, the first generation to really, no, we were, I believe, the last generation to really accept a lot of the social conditioning around sexual violence. Like, we are the first ones to really start talking about it in a way that's like, But even if you look at our generation, it's probably a very hard 50-50 split. I mean, you still have women in Generation X, 40s, 50s, who believe that 16-year-old girls have sexual agency to the degree of a 50-year-old man, that if your teenage daughter is being preyed upon by a 30-year-old man, well, why is she in that grown man's face? And I think part of the problem is that we've been socialized to seek male validation at all costs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that validation comes with sort of, throwing away your sexual agency or the sexual agency of young women. I made a Facebook post recently about this, that when we talk about large age gaps in dating, what tends to happen with that is that the same man, the same 50-year-old man that's going after the young 20-year-old girl is also going after the 45-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And now, instead of that 45-year-old woman looking at this young lady as, wait a minute, this is something probably predatory and exploitative and something's not right here, she sees her as competition. So when you see young women as competition, you're not going to protect them.
Yeah.
You don't care what happens to them. You don't say, hey, stay away from that guy, because even though you might like him and he might be a good guy, there's something else there that's attracting him to you, and it's possibly pathological. It doesn't mean he's a horrible person. He could be going through a difficult time. He could be going through a divorce. His wife could have just died. He could have lost his job. We use the term midlife crisis a lot. And I don't want to say that to diss brothers, because I know it's real, and I've had a couple of friends go through it, and it's real. And it's really real when you kind of get to the end of it and you hit rock bottom, and it's like, give me the gun. Life is going to be okay. Go do 72 hours, come on back, and let's start over. But I say all that as a digression to say that even in those spaces, that's one population. Then you have the other population, like the Robert Kellys of the world, who ain't going through no midlife crisis.
Yeah.
They're predators.
So let me ask you this, right? When it comes to something like that, because the obstacles that I've seen when I started speaking out against it is folks will say, well, what about the issues that he dealt with? Are we just gonna stop at his actions, or are we going to really look at the things? And I just feel like...
They really don't care about what happened to
Yeah.
him. They want us to shut up talking about it.
But I think there has to be a level of, to your point, accountability.
Absolutely.
You know, okay, yes, this happened, but what should I... Because the way I looked at it, and my sister was laughing at me. She was like, growing up, you were such a huge Rkelly fan. And she
We
said
all
you
were.
She said, you were the last person I thought would bash this guy. She said, you were the last person. And I was like, well, it's not really bashing, but I can't see these things happen and not say something about
Right.
it. And I just kind of, in my mind, I'm like, you have the money, go get help. Whatever treatment looks like to you. Because I think we're at a place.
You have to, first of all, okay, so there's a couple of things. So
Okay.
number one, whenever people bring that to my attention, because trust me, I've heard, well, he was abused and what? Okay, guess what? If everyone who was abused was also abusing other people, we would literally cannibalize the world.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, that's a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
Is it true that males who are abused sexually tend to act out sexually abusive? The data are inconclusive on that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of men who were sexually abused who are not sexually abusing other people. When people mention that to me, well, he was abused, my question is this. Why are you now talking about this then? Where was this conversation 5 years ago? Where was this conversation 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Where was all this concern for his mental health
Yeah.
20 years ago? Instead, you were too busy buying tickets, getting into the front row so he can rub his crotch in your face.
Yeah.
So you don't care about his abuse. You don't care about the subsequent abuse that he's caused. You care about not having your entertainment shut off.
Yeah.
That's it. So all of that is white noise to me
Yeah.
because you don't really care about the abuse. Is it true that hurt people? Absolutely. And I also believe that instead of excusing the behavior of hurt people, we need to change the narrative and demand that hurt people get help.
Yeah. I agree
If
with
you are,
wholeheartedly on that.
if you're broken, if you're going through a bad time, if you're messed up, and stop dating, stop talking to people, get out of people's lives. If you realize that you are an abuse victim and you're hurt and you have this proclivity to go to 13-year-old girls, that's a problem. And
Yeah.
maybe you should stop, maybe not go to the playground anymore, whatever you need to do, and get yourself some help.
Very true.
But that never happened. So when people give me that argument, it's a deflection, and I really just dismiss it because they really don't care about the help.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, it's so funny because, you know, I'm not ashamed to say it. I've sat down with a therapist, have had some great discussions. And it's so funny because when we've sat down and talked, one of the things that he said to me is, you know, typically what he sees is, you know, men who've gone through what I've been through, they either carry on a victim's mentality or they get a righteous anger towards a lot of things. They want to do something and change it. And so he says the stances that you take is not surprising because of some of the things that you've witnessed and some of the things that you've gone through.
Right.
But I kind of come back to this point of, okay, but at what point? I mean, because it can't be just like me and Griggs and all the other men who are seeing this and saying something. Like, it's got to be, we got to have more people stepping up and actually saying something.
Well, you have to, first of all, be willing to divorce the power that comes with it. And a lot of cis hetero black men are not going to do that because in a world of white supremacy, unfortunately, many find themselves powerless, and that this is the only power they have is in their communities over dominion of girls and kids and women and queers. And why are you going to take this away from us? And it's like, whoa, if your only power is oppression, then we need to come back to the table and change that definition because that is not your only power.
Yeah, and I think if we want to change things, change our communities, it's going to take a lot of us really seeing this. Because I've sat down, I've said it before. I think if a lot of the black men that see these issues, know that these issues are wrong, started speaking up, started joining our sisters, we could really see some things change. Because I was watching one of the civil rights movies. It was documentaries, and they were looking at the Black Panther movement, and they interviewed one of the women within the party. And she said, it was tough for us because we're fighting for these rights that the brothers in our own organization wouldn't give to us. And I was just like, it was at that moment that I sat
It's
back
real.
and thought, like, dang.
It's real.
So you want these women to join you in the fight for equality, but it's not a right that you'll give to them.
But to the degree that they are fighting with you. So often what I hear whenever I talk about being an intersectional feminist is, you hate black men. That's a lie.
Yeah.
I don't hate black men. I love black men.
Yeah.
And I understand the pain that many black men have. And, I'm not going to get into the whole ADOS conversation because I think it's pointless to some degree, not a slight, but
Yeah.
but the point is, I have, black male friends who are from the Caribbean islands, who are from Africa, who are, and they have the exact same experiences. So I say that to say that being black and cis male in America, you do come with some degree of oppression, and I get it. And I understand that oppression can sometimes manifest itself in some really kind of socially pathological behaviors that tend to be taken out on your intimate partners and people in your inner circle.
Yeah.
So, is it possible to say, guess what? I am an oppressed person. I also am using the little power that I have to oppress others.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We see it. Another example is, cis hetero women who kind of look down on queer and trans women. And it happens. And yes, you can be black and cis, hetero, female, and deal with all these levels of oppression and still shit on, excuse me, can I say that? And sorry.
Just roll with it, sister. Just roll.
and still kind of, oppress
Yeah.
queer and trans women. I see it every day.
Yeah.
And I think if you are an oppressed person, you tend to find that space, that angle. It's kind of like, osmosis. You go to the place where there's least concentration and you dominate there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have to stop doing that.
Yeah, most
As oppressed
definitely.
people, we have to stop doing that. But getting back to the civil rights movement, absolutely, that's a real problem. And a lot of the sisters who are now in their 60s and their 70s and their 80s are coming out to really
Yeah.
talk about what has happened to them while they were in the movement, and they're being shamed into silence. And absolutely, I will never allow that to happen, not in my space. No.
Well, I think if you talk about people who are oppressed,
Yes.
and there being a real movement to level out the playing field,
Right.
at some point you have to address the own issues within your own community. That's just the
Absolutely.
reality of it. And
Yep.
if there's like even within my own household, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can easily say, you know what? The Bible says I'm the man. I need to lead. I'm a lead. Let me lead. I don't know where I'm leading, but we gonna lead.
With your beautiful wife who's an OBGYN, that ain't gonna happen.
But at the same point, I think
You could do it, and it happens, and it does happen.
But I think there's got to be men who are humble enough to say, you know what? I don't have this all together.
No.
I don't know what these issues are.
Right.
Because I can almost guarantee you that, I mean, if we're real about it, right? When did there start being elected women in D.C. walking through Congress, sitting in those seats? You know what I'm saying? Like we're talking about
Yeah.
what, late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah.
And so if we're real, I think that a lot of these laws that were written to protect
Shirley
women,
and Maxine, oh
yeah,
God.
I think they would be written differently. You know?
Well, and so let's get to the legislative part, because I agree with that. I'll tell you a story of something that happened. 2016, I believe, I was lobbying the Georgia General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a piece of legislation that was up for a hearing to raise the penalty on school personnel who have sexual relationships with students. Cut and dry, right? Pretty easy. And somehow the conversation divulged into promiscuous girls and Lolitas, and it was so, and the irony is that the conversation and the hearing was led by Ed Seltzer, who also led the whole thing about the abortion bill, HB 481. The irony is not lost on me. However, I sat there and I listened to grown men, mostly white men, talking about, well, what if he knows that she's had sex with other adult men? I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Why does that matter?
And it took the representative from GBI to say, well, in that case, then he's a predator. Because how would he know that? In what world does a grown man need to know the sexual behavior of a 16-year-old girl?
Let's talk.
And it really, that to me was like, that was a breath of fresh air in that room. And yes, that was a man who stood up to other men to say, you tripping. It's like, come on. It's like, but the fact that these men were able to do that without giving a care. It's like, we could talk about 16-year-old girls' sexuality and what if she's been with other adult men and not have a degree of like, we probably shouldn't be doing that, is a degree of toxic patriarchy. And these men are legislators with power to control our laws. So when you mention why laws kind of look the way they look, they're being written by people like this.
Yeah. And the crazy part is, like, backtracking a little bit when you were talking about these 50-year-old men with these young adult women. Like, my wife and I were watching 90 Day Fiancé, and there was a 58-year-old man engaged to a 19-year-old girl. And the thing that I felt extremely bad about
that
was
makes my stomach hurt. Sorry.
Like, all I saw is, wow, that's a heck of an age difference. I can't believe that. That's what I saw.
She can't even participate fully in an adult life.
My wife was like, this dude's a predator.
He's a predator.
And it was like, at that moment, I was like, pause. Let's talk about this. Because I'm so conditioned to think that she's 18. I know he's 58, but she's over 18. But that's just in terms of, but this is what I'm saying, where we've got to talk about these things because in my mind, I'm conditioned to recognize the fact that she's over 18.
Right.
I'm not conditioned to look at the fact that this man is almost 60 years old.
Exactly.
And so when we paused and we talked about this, she was like, Dontaye, this man, I mean, he's like literally lived 2 lives.
Exactly.
Like 2 lifetimes before she became an adult.
She doesn't even understand what's happening. And then the thing with those kind of relationships that I find is, because I've talked to a few peers of mine, and most recently a friend of mine was sort of in a similar situation. And, it ended odd, but I think he got it. And the idea is, do I believe that men who do that are necessarily all predators? No. Do I believe that a lot of it is socialization? Absolutely. Do I believe that some of these men are questionable? You damn right. And you're right, when you're talking about someone who has been a child longer than an adult, and you have, to quote your wife, lived 2 lifetimes, so you're expecting this girl to jumpstart her life 40 years. To be with you, because what happens in those situations, and I've been very open about my own personal experiences with a large age gap and that it was horrible. And one of the things that tends to happen with that is this idea of, why are you acting like that? A lot of these men expect these very young women to respond emotionally and psychologically like their peers without understanding that she truly is immature. That's like expecting my cat to drive me to the grocery store. It's not going to ever happen. And then that's where the frustration starts. That's where the abuse starts, because now it's, I'm mad at you because you didn't act the way I wanted you to act. So now I'm going to punish you for that, without understanding that what you're doing in these relationships is expecting someone to jumpstart their emotional development 30 years to match you, yet you don't want your peer for whatever reason, and you think that that is a healthy relationship. It's not. And often what happens in those spaces, and I had this conversation with Jackie Reed a few days ago on the Tom Joyner morning show, it often represents an unmet need for adult male companionship, protection, validation from the girl, and a need for, a pathological sometimes need for control in that man.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's kids were older than this girl. His kids.
I know the case, and like, I think he's a fireman or something, or policeman or something.
Oh, no, he's a business owner. He's a guy with a lot of money.
Oh, he's a guy, okay. Because I know there was another one that was a fireman that... The kids think it's crazy. Everyone thinks it's crazy, and the reality is that it's not an equal relationship in any sense of the imagination. And at some point, what happens in those relationships is, she meets someone her own age, inevitably.
Yeah, and she's ready to run.
And it's like, thanks, Dad, but I got to go.
Yeah.
Because the relationship was never built on the foundation of romance. It was never built on the foundation of equity. It was built on the foundation of, you got something I can use. You got money, you're a businessman, you have assets, you have resources, and yeah, I'll pinch my nose and whatever, but is that equity? Absolutely not. And then for the girl, it's, what I often hear in these kind of things, getting back to the girl, is she does this. So fast forward, whenever I've had peers who've dealt with these relationships, and I would say all but one actually became a real relationship. They all failed.
Yeah.
And within these conversations, one of the things that my peers would often tell me about the really young girls is, well, she never called me back. I text her, she didn't text me back. She did this. I'm like, because she's immature?
Yeah.
Because that's what 21-year-old girls do when they don't have an answer. When they feel overwhelmed, they fall back. It's not that she's playing games with you. It's not that she's, emotionally manipulating you. She's acting 21 years old, and that's what young women do when we're overwhelmed. We retreat.
Yeah.
But if you're expecting her, like I told a friend of mine, if you're expecting her to act like a 45-year-old woman in those spaces of emotional conflict, you should be dating a 45-year-old woman, because you're asking her to jumpstart her life 20 to 30 years, and that's not fair.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just dropped that bombshell.
You wanted me to come on and talk about this.
I appreciate it because
we can come back and talk about it some more.
No, but I think what people don't see a lot of, right, is they don't see the professionals in these spaces, because we're always taught that, okay, you've got business, then you've got this community activism work. They're separate and apart.
Right.
But I don't think they're separate and apart.
No, not at all.
I think they come hand in hand and together. But I also think that it's going to take, people like you, which I'm so grateful for you and Ornike just really stepping up and saying, you know what?
That's my girl.
We shutting this thing down. It ain't riding like this.
Shout out to Ornike, out to Lay.
Yeah,
my partner in crime, you are Rkelly.
Because, I'll be honest. Even when I first got the call in, Jared was like, hey, I need some help here.
Hey.
My wife was just like, look, I don't care if you got to do the case pro bono. Like, you got a daughter, you got me. Like, at some point, you got to stop sitting over here throwing grenades and hiding your hands and act like you're not involved. Like,
I appreciate
we need y'all engaged.
But I appreciate you being here.
No, I appreciate my wife having that heart to say, look, like, I really don't care how you feel. I know what needs to be done, and I know where you're needed. And so, but it's just so many of us that are needed in this space, and we can't sit over here and say, you know what, I'm a businessman, I do this, or I've got this going on. Like, no, like, these issues all...
Well, I'll take it a step further, and I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers. Sean Puffy Combs is 51 years old, and now has allegedly gotten a 22-year-old girl pregnant. It's like Steve Harvey's stepdaughter or whatever.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation, and then less than a week ago, he's down at the state capitol, hobnobbing with legislators and politicals. And I'm like, wait a minute, what in the sweet hell is going on here? So it's like, all you got to do is drop some money into our economy, and you can do what you want to do, and we don't hold you accountable. Yeah. And that's not going to work as long as Kenyette is on this planet.
Hey, well, we appreciate it. No, I'm serious. I think it's going to take some big turns, some big efforts. And I think, and I tell... a lot of the activists nowadays, I tell them all the time, I say, what we're seeing now is something you didn't see in the civil rights age.
Absolutely. You weren't able to. Yeah. These sisters were out here. I mean, Angela Davis talked about this. I mean, she talked about this. We didn't have the term. I mean, God bless, and, shout out to Kimberly Crenshaw, my sister, I love her, she gave us the language we needed for intersectionality.
Yeah.
But yeah, Angela Davis was talking about this like back in the 60s, like, yo, these brothers is out here, involved in colorism and, we're going to, have sex with the dark-skinned girls, but you can only have babies with the light-skinned girls. And, it's like, only the light-skinned girls could be up front, but then the dark-skinned girls got to be in the back making bean pies. Yeah, we all fighting against white supremacy. Brother, please.
Yeah. And that's why I said, like, it's just going to take a level of education.
And giving up your privilege.
Yeah.
While being oppressed.
But,
that's got to be tough. It's got to be tough.
I don't think it's giving up, right? I don't think that's it at all. I think it's being able to submit your privilege, right?
I
to
like
a
that
greater
better.
cause.
Submit your privilege.
Because I think a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm giving up. No, I'm not giving anything up. I'm submitting it so that I can bring somebody else up.
I like that.
And
if I say that in public, I'll quote you.
I appreciate it.
We need men to submit their privilege. Do you guys hear that? Submit your privilege.
Because
brothers, submit your privilege.
Because when you submit, right, you're giving something up for somebody else.
Absolutely.
And we've got to get to this place of if we really want to rise and we want to rise up. I think it's going to take us understanding that, rising up and taking people with us takes sacrifice.
Yeah, but you have to also accept that there are people who don't want to change the status quo. I mean, you have black men who are very wedded to the idea of, I am the leader of the community, of the house. I am the one that you hear. I mean, you see it in our churches. It's like,
Yeah, but I think that.
But we're changing. I think, and I have a lot of.
And those are a lot of older cats.
Yeah, they're.
The young bucks.
I love. I'm gonna tell you. People give millennials a hard time, but I honestly believe that they're going to be the first generation to actually have the language.
Yeah.
To really shift this. I mean, I'm seeing, young people have their babies and the kids are dressed in neutral colors and, they're not like overly pushing them into gendered activities and they're really having these conversations. You're seeing households where women are not giving up their last names and they're maintaining their profession.
My wife still has her last name.
And that's, and it's funny you say that because when I was married, I had my name for a while and then I hyphenated it. And I have actually told, a partner I was seeing, I would never give up my name again. I mean, I'm like, I like my name. It has a ring to it.
Yeah.
I like Kenyette Tisha Barnes, and he was very offended by it. And it was like, well, no, I would never marry a woman who wouldn't take my name. I'm like, well, guess what's not going to happen?
I mean, me and a friend of mine, we went toe to toe on this issue. He said, I don't understand why your wife doesn't have your last name. And I said, I can tell you why.
Because she's a human and she don't want it.
I said, she's a human. I said, but it wasn't even that she wanted it.
Right.
I was the one that said no
you don't
because I looked at how much money she had to pay because she has to get her driver's license changed,
you
her
have
medical
to change
license
everything.
changed, the board membership, like all these things.
Yeah.
Like to me, it's not that important. Like I'm comfortable enough in what we have and what we're building.
Yeah.
That, you know what?
And for me, it's when I went through my divorce in 2014, 15, I can't remember, 14. I had to pay $700 extra just to have my damn name back. It was really weird. It was whack.
Wow.
I was like, that was part of like the decree. But then if I would have done it separately, I would have had, it was weird. But it was like, wait a minute, I got to pay money to get my own name back? And so that to me sticks in my head.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm a grown-ass woman.
Yeah.
I like my name. It works. And, if I decide to get married again, that's just something he's going to have to accept. Unless he has a fly name. Like, if his name is, like, Devereaux, if he has, like, some fly, Italian name, Gianni, maybe.
Yeah.
But he has to have a fly name.
Yeah.
Fly.
But you know what? That's your identity.
It is my identity.
And that's how you've humanized yourself.
And maybe that should be our next show.
Ooh!
Save it.
So
we'll talk
coming
about
back?
Oh, of course I'm coming back. Yay!
We went through like all the breaks, everything. But I really enjoyed having you on and just this
enjoyed being
discussion.
here.
Before my phone died, it was lighting up on IG. Like sisters was like, it was like, oh, she's speaking that truth.
Thank you guys. But yeah, I'll definitely be back, and we could talk about some more stuff because we could talk about name changes. We could talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I love it. But like I said, I think this is a conversation that's needed, and
Yes.
I'm just grateful you're able to lend your voice to this platform so that we can really talk about these things.
Yay! I'm back.
But, oh yeah! So hey, everybody, thank you all for tuning in. Dontaye Carter with Beyond the Brand right here on Hits 92.3, and I'm gonna get this grinding on my light phone. Did it? Oh man, it didn't play. I gotta push my stop. Oh, I pushed on the wrong side.
We're having
Excuse me.
technical difficulties. Hey,
We back though.
we back the.
All my life, been grinding all my